Today, I'm going to be telling you what is game art. If you're interested in game art, I'm going to be telling you about how you can be a game artist, what skills, what approach to take, education, everything. You're going to know all about how to become a successful game artist within the next 1 hour. Also, I have my own game studio, and we guys are actually working on a game, a pixel art RPG called Mayu Last of the Yaksha, based on Indian culture and mythology, and you'll come to know about it soon. All right, now let's talk about game art. So, there is a lot of confusion, guys. They confuse game designing with game art. So, what's the difference between game designing and game art? Game designing, is it making a game in Unity or Unreal, or creating some kind of art using Blender, or character modeling, rigging, and animation? What's game designing? What's game art? And what's the difference? No, game designing and game art are two completely different things. Game designing is not game art. First, let's understand a little bit about the game development process. Okay, the game development has four processes. Firstly, there is game design. Next, there is game programming. There is game art, and there is game testing. These are four very, very different processes. And if you want to understand what is game art, you have to understand where it is in the process of game development. So you have to understand the entire development process. I'll give you a little bit of an idea about what game designers do so that you don't get confused between game design and game art. Game design means answering the following questions: who is going to play this game? What is the objective of this game? How do you win? What exactly can and cannot the player do in the game? What is the player going to feel while playing the game? How can we make the player feel this way? How can we make the players spend their money for free to play games? So, game designers, they write documents, they use the game engine to create levels, etc., etc. But that's not for today. But I just wanted you to understand that game design is very different from game art. What do game artists do? Game artists create the art assets that go inside the game, right? Can you see this character? This character was made by a game studio here in India, in Hyderabad, called Little Red Zombies. This is a game character. It was created by game artists. This is a gun which can be used in a game. This is created by game artists. This, once again, is an illustration. It's a model, it's a train, it's a tree, it's a vox. It is created by game artists, right? So, game design and game artists are very, very different roles. I need to understand that. So, what is the process of creating game art? I want to talk about that a little bit. What is the process of creating game art? And now I'm talking about not people who are kind of working by themselves at home. How do professionals do it? How do professional game studios do it? Okay, let me see which one of you can recognize this character. If you can recognize this character, let me know. What character is this? So this is a sketch, a concept sketch, right? When you start creating game art, you don't just start with Blender or whatever. In professional companies and professional game studios, the whole process starts by actually creating a sketch of whatever character or art you're going to make, and then there is an illustration. So from concept sketch, the next step is illustration. A concept sketch can have 5, 10, 15 different sketches. You can change things. A sketch can be created really, really quickly, and from the sketch, once all the people who are involved in the game project have been consulted, then you go to illustration, right? This is the sniper from TF2. And if anyone got that right, congratulations. This is a sniper character from TF2. You go from concept sketch to illustration, and then from illustration, you go to something called production art. So, this is actually a 3D character in the game, and this is the process: first sketch, then illustration, and then production art. So generally, this is the pipeline. I'm just showing you a very rough idea of the pipeline of game art, but this is the process. No one just gets straight into production art in the professional game industry. You first start with a concept sketch. Okay, now I want to talk about the different kind of disciplines, and I will talk about the different kind of disciplines starting with 2D art. Okay, and this is concept art. Now I'm showing you some stuff which is actually from the game I've been working on, which is Mayu Last of the Yaksha. We have these characters which are actually in game, but this is concept art. So concept art is when you really, really make a rough sketch or not just a rough sketch, it would even be slightly of the character. You don't spend too much time. You do a little bit of work on the concepts. You don't spend too much time, so that then it guides the 3D artist, it guides the people who are going to make the production art. So in concept art, you can make characters, creatures, environments, vehicles, weapons, scenes, and photo bashing, right? All of these things can be done under concept art. Okay, next up in disciplines, you have illustrations. So, illustrations is actually the next step from concept art. This gives an actual feel of the game. This is actually a fully colored, beautiful model of the game. This can be used by the 3D artists or the 2D artists to actually create production art. This can also be used for marketing the game, etc., etc. Right? So, these are characters, creatures, environments, vehicles, weapons, scenes, and again, photo bashing. Illustrations is another kind of discipline which is a part of 2D game art. Okay, now you also have something called vector art. Vector art is something which is used. There are actually many games which are actually fully made in vector art. So it's also a kind of discipline in which you can specialize in this, and you can actually make games completely using vector art, graphic design, and motion graphics. Okay, all right, next up, stylized art. You know which game this is. It's a very particular kind of game art which is really in vogue these days. Caricatures, doodles, comic book comics, manga, and toonie. Right. Next up, let's get into 3D art. In 3D art, you have modeling. So modeling is the act of actually creating the model, the 3D model, in which again you have characters, you have vehicles, you have environments, you have architecture, you have creatures, you have weapons, you have hard surface modeling, you have organic modeling, and you have voxel art modeling. Right now, these are very kind of like complex and very deep topics. So I'm not able to explain too much in depth right now. And of course, there's low poly modeling as well. By the way, low poly modeling is really in huge demand, and good low poly modelers can actually make a lot of money these days, right? Next up, you have texturing. So texturing is texturing is a discipline in which you actually create textures for 3D models. You have hand painted textures, and you have materials as well. Okay, so another discipline in 3D is texturing. Next up, you have sculpting. Sculpting is actually creating the details of the face, the body, etc. For this ZBrush, etc. is used. You can again create characters, creatures. There's baking, and there's physics-based rendering, which is also a sculpting process. Okay, so as you can see, there is a lot of complexity to this process. There's a lot to learn, but don't be intimidated, because there's a lot to learn. Once you get into it, once you're specialized, it's not that hard. It's really interesting. You can go really deep into a topic. You can go really deep into one particular specialization in game art and really get better at that. Right, let's talk about more game art disciplines. Rigging is when you actually put the bones, etc., and this is the precursor to actually animating it. Then there is something called animation. Animation is when you actually take a 3D model and you put animations on it. So you go rigging, and then you go animation, and then you have lighting and compositing, which means that how does the scene look in the game, how does the model look, etc., etc., is also a very important topic. And then of course, within 3D art, you have particles and visual effects. So a lot of you have questions about, can I be a VFX artist? Yes, you can be, but you have to be a 3D artist first, and then you can be a visual effects artist in the game industry. So animation and visual effects are very small parts of game art. Okay, it's not enough to just be a visual effects artist or you can be an animator, but you have to be at a really big studio to only get the job of an animator. Right now, the most important thing for a lot of you guys to remember is that there is art and animation for movies, and then there is game art, and these are not the same. It's very important to realize that normal art for animation movies and for game art is very, very different. It's not the same. Just because you've gone to Mac or you've gone to some institute and you've learned a little bit of art and animation for VFX, you can get into the game industry. It's not like that at all, and I'm going to tell you why. Now, remember that when you make art and animations for movies, you don't really care about something of the poly count. So what you are seeing here are polygons. Now, these polygons are really, really, really important, because what happens is that when you're rendering a scene for a movie, you can render that scene. You can take 3 days to render that scene. It's absolutely no problem. You can take 4 days to render that scene. But in games, what's happening is that your laptop or your computer is rendering the actual model real time, which means that not only does the 3D model or whatever your art you're making, does it have to look good, it has to be optimized. The file size has to be small, and also the polys have to be as low as possible. Otherwise, the game is going to lag. Okay, the game is going to lag unless the model is like the one on the left. So you have to make sure that game art is optimized. It has to have the lowest possible polys while still looking good, right? Now, as you can see here, you have three different kinds. It's the same model of three different kinds. On right side, you have the high poly model with 9,000 polys, and mid poly is 1,000, and on the left you have 562 polys. And look at the huge difference between the polys for the one on the right and the one on the left. The one on the right cannot be used in games, the one on the left can be used in games. And the skill of a game artist is to make sure that models are optimized and still are looking good. That is the real skill of a game artist, and that is how game artists are very, very different from other artists in animation, VFX, etc. Right? Now the question comes, how do you learn game out? There are two ways of doing this. You can have structured training or you can have self learning, right? These are two different ways to which actually you can have an approach to learning game art. Now, for self learning, you can self learn, you can learn through YouTube or Udemy or whatever. But the problem is that it takes years and years. It takes a long time because you don't have any guidance. You're going to make a lot of mistakes. There are going to be many, many rejections from companies. You're going to be sending out your portfolio. So it's possible that people who self learn, you have to have a lot of guts, because you're going to make a lot of mistakes. People are going to keep rejecting you till the time you reach that skill level. Okay. And also, there's something called opportunity cost. Now, if you're self learning, say, suppose you take 3 or 4 years to self learn game art, right? So basically, for 2 or 3 or 4 years, you're not earning, you're only learning. And the difference between that is also that you have no network and community. Self learning is, you can do it. I see a lot of people trying to do it, but these are the problems. You also have no network, you have no community, because you're basically sitting by yourself in front of a computer, you're watching YouTube, and you don't have all these things. Of course, it's kind of, you don't spend much, but then you lose a lot when it comes to opportunity cost. And I'll explain what opportunity cost is. Now, if you have structured training, you can actually learn it in 1 year or less. I learned game design in 1 year, and within 1 year, I went from being a merchant navy officer. I was a game designer. Right, so that's the power of structured training and mentorship, right? And if you have structured training, there is a mentor who guides you. You don't make so many mistakes. If you make a mistake, your mistakes are corrected really, really fast, and that means you have a much shorter training period, and the quality of your work is going to be much better, much faster. You're going to have fewer rejections, in the sense that you can be rejected 10, 20 times by game studios for a job. Your portfolio can be rejected similarly. If you have a structured training program, the mentor can actually help you with interviews and tests and building a portfolio, which means you have much fewer rejections, right? Next, you start earning faster. So this is where the opportunity cost comes in, right? So a lot of you guys must be thinking, look, I don't want to spend money, I want to do it for free. But you are losing a lot of money in opportunity costs. Say, suppose you spend 1 year extra self learning. Remember that you could have been earning during that time. You could have been earning like say 30, 40,000 rupees a month. And if you multiply 40,000 rupees a month by even a year, that's like 4 lakhs, 5 lakh rupees. By self learning, you're actually losing opportunity cost. If you do a structured training program, you actually could be gaining 4 to 5 lakh rupees. So it's not cheap. If you think, self learning is actually one of the most expensive things that you guys can do, and I see a lot of people making that mistakes, right? Also, the good part of a structured training program is that you have a network and you have a community. And as we know, network is a really, really big deal in the game industry, and you can really get hired fast through a good network and community, right? Now, the most common mistake I see guys making, what people do is that they're like, you know what, I'm going to learn from YouTube, I'm going to learn from Udemy, and they download Blender and they make a few 3D models by watching YouTube videos, and then they say like, I'm a game artist. And the truth is that that is not really true. Most people like this, they create an Instagram page, starts posting a few videos, and then start applying to game studios, and then they get rejected, and then they get completely disappointed, right? That is a problem these days because there's a lot of free resources everybody, and everyone considers themselves to be a game artist, and unfortunately that's not true. Right now, I'll tell you first what you have to do is you have, before you want to be a game artist, right, before you jump into Blender, before you jump into like advanced things like 3D modeling, etc., etc., you have to have a strong base in art. Forget about game art. You have to have a base in art. Okay, I have 7 8, I have about 12 artists who are working under me at my studios, and every single one of them is fundamentally a very, very good artist. They can take a pen, they can take paper, they can make beautiful illustrations, they have all the basic art skills, and that enables them to be good game artists, right? So you can't take the shortcut of saying, I want to be a game artist, but I don't want to learn the fundamentals. I want to get straight into 3D art. Okay, you'll be a terrible 3D artist. You are not going to survive long in the game industry anywhere unless your art fundamentals are basically strong. Okay, so what the art fundamental means: drawing. You have to know how to do research for the artwork that you're going to make. You have to know about perspective. You have to know about color theory. You have to know about anatomy, and you have to know about shading. You have to know these things before you actually get into game art, right? These things are very, very important. Now, people may ask, sir, what about colleges and institutes? And that's the next question from people. Rahul, tell me a good game college, can tell me a good institute to go for in India. And the sad truth is that when it comes to games, there is absolutely no good college. There is no institute for game art. I keep getting these kind of questions. People who have spent 4 lakh rupees, 5 lakh rupees on all kinds of useless courses, and at the end of it, they learned nothing about game art. They are just lost. They've lost their money. And I keep getting these really, really sad stories in in my inbox. So please be very, very careful, especially in India, about joining any kind of game institute. Right? There is no good game art or institute college in India. That's the sad truth. Okay, which is fundamentally why I started Gamer to Maker. I started a game art mentorship program because there was nothing available in India for people. Okay. Now, the other option, of course, you have that you can go abroad to study, but the problem is that the cost of going abroad to study is more than a crore, right? If you have 1 crore rupees, if you have rich parents, you have a rich dad, you're most welcome to spend 1 crore rupees and go abroad to Vancouver Film School or whatever to learn game art, and that's really good. But for those who don't have it, it's tough.